We're live. So today, this is Nikki from Motherhood Unfiltered. It's going to be okay. And today I get to interview uh, Kintsugi talk host, podcast host, Saroya Brown, and she's with us today. And she's going to tell us about her journey and what led up to her starting her own podcast. So Saroya, thank you for being here. And I would like first to start off and explain what kintsugi means. So that way, if you don't know what it means, I mean, you might be able to say it better than I can, but if you don't know what it means, we'll find out. So,
Yeah, no problem. Kintsugi is a Japanese art form of pottery. So they'll have a piece of pottery like a plate, a vase, a bowl.
mhm.
And when it gets broken, like it usually it's like shatters into pieces, they take those pieces and they put it back together again using some type of melted down metal. Typically gold is used. And
Wow,
the philosophy behind that is that even in like brokenness, there is still beauty in it. That it
right.
was already like a piece of art before, but even when it's broken, like you can see like the gold and the cracks, it's still a beautiful piece of art.
Wow, that's amazing. I did go out and search for that because I was like, what does this mean? I knew it had to mean something special. And when you go out there and you see how they created, or recreated the pottery, it was just really beautiful and I just love that whole concept how, you may be a broken piece of crap, but you can rebuild yourself and be something even more beautiful than you were before. And I just love that whole concept. And that, I mean, I don't even know how you came up with that, but I would never have thought of that. And I just thought it was just so beautiful. So, so how long have you had your podcast?
My podcast is very new. It's a baby. Um, I want to say because right now there is 14 episodes. I want
Hmm.
to say it's been about a month,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
about a month. So it's very new, very fresh.
Well, I love it. I love hearing your voice. I thought, I wonder if I could give her some of my favorite stories and have her record them, then she can talk me to sleep. So, because it was very calm and soothing.
Oh,
But
thank you
I
so
loved
much.
it. I love listening to it. I am a podcast addict. I listen to podcasts. And so it was just so fitting that um, I've had mine for almost a year, and you know, I feel like it's still a baby too, because I don't have millions listeners yet. Because I'm always so more optimistic than what I should be. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to start this podcast, and everybody's going to want to listen to it. Well, I'm
Mhm.
sure they will, but they got to find it first. I think that's the big thing is just getting it out there and having people find your podcast. But um, so so we're going to talk about you've had several diagnoses. Well, first of all, you grew up, you've had a lot of um, trauma in your life personally, and then you had some things happen from results of that. So talk about your how and when you were diagnosed
Mhm.
with your personality disorder or your borderline personality disorder.
Mhm. So, I didn't receive the BPD diagnosis until August of last year. So the diagnosis is fairly new.
Yeah,
Um, Up until that point, I had just been living with the diagnosis of depression and anxiety since 2016.
yeah.
Um, what had led to the point of me even getting the BPD diagnosis is that I just felt like there was just something wrong. I was going through
Yeah.
things that it just didn't fall in line with just like with it just being depression or just being anxiety.
Right.
So
Right.
I took it into my own hands. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna look for a different psychiatrist. And
Hmm.
the one that I have now, I told her that is like I want to be like reevaluated
Hmm.
because like I've been living with depression, anxiety for a long time, but I'm dealing with certain things that is just that it just doesn't add up.
Right.
And so she did the assessments on me. She reevaluated me, and it was first narrowed down to either borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder.
Hmm. Yep.
Now, with those two disorders, they are very similar. They literally have like the same symptoms. The
Right.
only the only difference is that one is a mood disorder, which is bipolar, and then one is a personality disorder, BPD.
Right.
And so I appreciate that my psychiatrist, she took her time in making sure that she diagnosed me with the right thing, which it was like a month,
Uh-huh.
um, about a month of just like really doing like a lot of like assessing, a lot of like talking.
Hmm.
And then she finally said that's like, yes, you have borderline personality disorder.
So up to that point, so when you heard that, were you like, I mean, sometimes when a doctor tells me something, I'm like scared out of my mind. But then other times, they might tell me something, I'm like relieved, like, okay, we finally have a name on this thing. Now I know I can start being more proactive and what can I do to for myself to make myself feel better. I mean, how did you feel whenever after that month of the assessments and everything, and she finally said, okay, this is what it is, you know?
Mhm. Um, I felt relieved that I finally had an answer
Yeah.
that made sense.
Right.
Um, but then quickly after dealing with emotions of just like, oh, like now I'm gonna have to like probably be on new medication and like with therapy, like I don't know what type of therapy I'm
Yeah.
gonna need now and all that stuff. So there was a bit of a feeling of just like, oh, that I have to like kind of like start over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
um, because living with depression and anxiety for so long, but then looking back on it, like moments where it's like I thought I was coming out of like a depression episode that I was like, oh, I'm fine, and to turn out that I was like, no, you were dealing with times of being manic because
Yep.
of your undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. So you were never really fine. Um,
Right.
so definitely dealing with a lot of feeling like that. So yeah, that's
Hmm.
definitely how it felt for me.
I know when they start you on new medication, I mean, a lot of you have to take it for at least 3 to 4 weeks before you even notice any good effects from it. And sometimes it's really frustrating because if you have something that's just not working, you're like, I just
Mhm.
wasted 3 weeks, you know? And that's one of the things about um, those types of medication. It's like once I start on something and it's like working 80%, I'm like, I don't want to bother this. I might not, get back to this, good effect. So did you have trouble with that, or was your, doctor really good about getting the medications down right for you? So
Mhm.
when you started taking them, you didn't have to keep trying different stuff or different types of medication.
Mhm. She was very careful in what
Mm.
she wanted to prescribe me,
Right.
which again I appreciate because with the type of medications for anyone who has any type of diagnosis, whether it be BPD, schizophrenia, or even just depression,
Hmm.
uh, the different types of psychotic medications that are out there, they can be very intense and they can affect people very differently.
Right. Right.
So for me, currently, I am on four different types of medication, and
Hmm.
they each serve a different purpose.
Hmm.
There was a bit of trial and error as far as the dosage of the
Hmm.
medication,
Yeah.
but what is it that the medication that I do take now? It is giving me a bit of difficulty as far as like helping me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I have been on the medication now since August of last year, so I've been on
Mm-hmm.
it for like a pretty good amount. Just the dosages have been changed.
Right,
So
right.
and then with my psychiatrist, her again being careful because the side effects of taking certain psychotic medications can be like very severe. Like it could
Yeah,
lead to like to added on like physical health problems, like weight
yeah.
gain,
Oh, yeah.
like
Some of
things
them
like
are,
that.
yeah, some of the medications. I know my son, he took one type of medication and he just ate all the time. And he told the doctors like, I can't keep eating like this. It's awful. And
Hmm.
so they did change his medicine. And so we're in that phase now of seeing if this new medication works. And now it helped with him not eating me out of the house, but um, so then the other parts of it, he's still dealing with. So would you say, would you say that your life is like slowly getting better, living with that?
Um, I would say it's slowly getting more difficult. It's slowly getting more difficult. Um, I
That's
am
not supposed
in
to happen.
I I know. The realization that I came to a long time ago,
Mhm.
like very early into like the beginning of like just my mental health journey in
Yeah,
general, was that there is no one size fits all when it comes to medication, when it comes
no,
to treatment of any kind. And
right.
when it comes to medication in general, that like I can find like a medication that can work for me. That I was like, oh, like I find one that finally works, and it could work for me for years. But then at
Hmm.
some point, it will stop working.
I know.
At some point, it will stop working, and so then I'm going to have to find another one, and I'm going to have to continue with that process for however many years that God
Mhm.
allows me to be on this earth for.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think a lot of people who don't uh understand the like the neurological side of it a lot,
Hmm. Hmm.
because like the medication works, but it's like the brain is a whole different thing with the neurons and the nervous system and everything like
Right,
that.
right.
So that is the complicated part. That is like the truth that a lot of people um have to live with, whether even with like taking pain medication
Oh, yeah.
for an injury. Like I have a
Yeah.
friend who recently she injured her knee, and the strongest thing they could give her was like 600 milligrams of ibuprofen, which is
Yep.
pretty much the same as buying over the counter Tylenol.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And however, I think though, as time goes on, um, hopefully they'll come out with better medications that will last longer, have less side effects, and be less destructive to your, physiology of your own body. So I think that is something to look forward to. However, I mean, we all know how long it takes for the FDA to make their decisions on things. So,
Yeah.
so I know that you are part of a church community. So, what is still what is something that's still hard to accept when it comes to your faith in God? I mean, has this been a problem, or me, I'd be like, why did you do this to me? God, come on. But we all know that he works differently than what we do. So,
Yes. Um, yeah, that's a good question. I would say I've been through a lot of different like trials and tribulations when it comes to my level of faith throughout
mhm,
everything that I've been through up at this point, relating to my mental illness diagnosis. Um, my church community is definitely has played a big role in
mhm,
just helping me navigate my faith.
Mm-hmm.
One, to realize that it's okay if my faith doesn't look like everybody else's faith,
Right.
because everyone goes through something. Like, is
Mm-hmm.
it may not be the same thing, but everyone goes through something, and that something can affect your faith either a little bit or a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can say that I'm like in a spot now where I'm just really looking to God, not even to ask of like, oh, like, why is this, like, why did you do this to me, but just to find a greater purpose in everything.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think that is like, when you change your point of view from going to from asking God, like, why did he do this to me? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you ask a question like that to God, it's like you're blaming him for what has happened in your
Well, that's
life.
just how I am. This ain't my fault. See, that's
Yeah.
why you're a better person than I am, because you're like, how can I use this to make someone else's life better? And I'm like, darn it, why am I have to do this? And that's why I do some of the same, I have to learn the lessons over and over because I'm just so, hard headed and stubborn. So,
Uh, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. I mean, like, to get to this way of thinking that I have now, I mean,
uh-huh.
I still wrestle with it, like, every now and then.
Yeah.
Like, it's still very hard to get to a place where you're allowing yourself to try to comprehend what
Yeah.
God is doing in your life. Because at the
Right.
end of the day, there is no human being that could fully comprehend God's mind. Because God's mind is all the way up here and we're just at level zero. Like,
Yeah.
that's just how it is.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
So, so I know, and when we talked in our early or other call, you said that you noticed there was something different about you when you were young. So, I mean, what were some of those differences that, um, you noticed, or, that would set you apart from the other kids?
Mhm. Um, I I was thinking things. I thought about death a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That was like kind of like the main thing, that is like, I had a self-awareness that was like, okay, I'm different. Like, I didn't call
Yeah.
myself weird, I didn't call myself like crazy. I'm just like, okay, I'm different. Because
Right.
I didn't even have to ask like other kids. That's like, because I know kids at the age of like 5, 6 years old, they're not thinking about death. Like, is just a little bit of common sense there. um but I was also very emotional as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
um I felt my emotions very, very strongly.
Right.
Um, and what didn't help with that was the way that I was raised. Um,
Mhm.
I was raised to kind of grow up very quickly.
Mhm.
So when I got to like a certain age, like this level of responsibility was put on me. I did become an aunt at a very young age.
Mhm.
So I had like my nieces and nephews that I was always being used as an example. Mind you, I had an older sister, but I had an older sister, but all the responsibility and all this stuff was put on me from a very
Right.
young age.
Right.
And it's like, anytime I like acted like a child, like,
Mhm.
is it apparently was like, you're doing that too much. Like, you need to relax.
I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, because like at that age, it's like I couldn't talk back, because it's like, it's my mom, it's my older
Uh-huh.
brothers. Um, so yeah, from a very young age, I knew that I was very different
Right.
from other kids my age.
So did your family look at you and like, okay, this Saroya chick is totally out there in left field, or that's just her? They didn't realize that maybe you needed some extra help or anything, um, or they just thought, well, she's emotional. So they just didn't pay attention to the symptoms. I mean, how did that work out? I mean,
Mm.
do you remember them telling you, okay, she's just overly emotional. Once you go lay down and take some time to yourself, I mean, how did that work?
So, um, let me start out by saying this: that in any minority community,
Hmm.
mental health and mental illness is not talked about.
Right.
Um, and me being African American myself,
Hmm.
uh, in the Black community, we don't talk about it. It's
Hmm.
like you can ask like any person that is like I'm a millennial. I'm 27.
Right.
So growing up being a 90s baby, um, with my parents, well, with my mom, she was technically not a baby boomer. Um, I think she just classifies as a baby boomer. I'm not sure. Um,
She probably is. My mom's a baby boomer, but I mean, if they're born in, I think, the 50s or 60s, they're considered a baby boomer. So, but
mhm,
yeah, no, you're right about that. During that time, like, there was hardly no one talked about it, being, depressed or whatever. So yeah, I can totally see where the where they just didn't say anything.
mhm,
Before then, they would just take you away. Well, where did
mhm.
Susie Q go? you know, Nobody asked. They're just like, oh, she's not here anymore.
Yeah,
It's
like
just
because growing up, the only thing that I kind of knew about depression and anxiety was from media, was from television.
okay,
And the only thing I knew about depression is just people who are sad all the time. Only
right.
thing I knew about anxiety is people who they think too much.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so for me growing up as a child, I was just saw as someone who is just very emotional.
Right.
And I wasn't really allowed to express my emotions in ways that a child should.
Right.
If anything, I was taught to suppress them, and I just
Yep.
had to keep on moving, keep on pushing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that did definitely shape into a lot of traumatic responses that I deal with now.
Hmm.
That when I look back at it now, that I was like, oh, like I do this because I wasn't allowed to express myself as a child. I act
Yeah.
like I act more mature for my age because I didn't really have a childhood. I had to grow up very quickly.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely what it had the effect on me. So there was
So
no
how
talk of like signs or anything. It's like they didn't really deal with it.
right. Well, maybe they didn't realize it was a sign, you
Hmm.
know. I mean, if you don't know anything about it, except a general sense of what you see on TV, I mean, Lord, I mean, TV doesn't even show you correctly when someone is sick or whatever.
Hmm.
So I know that you work with kids. So have you seen or seen anything that you see yourself in them? Like, oh my, okay, so
Oh yeah.
maybe you do. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. um,
Well, how do you handle that? I mean, I've been calling their parents, hey, I hate to tell you this, but this kid needs some help.
um, I do not have the official authority to call the kid's parents and say, I think your child needs
Well,
therapeutic help.
maybe I
Um,
wouldn't need you to do that, but maybe you could be like, okay, let's give little Johnny here some extra love because he's definitely
mhm,
struggling, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah. I see a lot of myself in the kids, as
yeah.
far as their emotional and mental well being.
Hmm.
Um, and dealing with kids who live in New York City, where I live. I work in the South
Right.
Bronx.
Hmm.
South Bronx, well, the Bronx in general is kind of notorious for not being the safest place
Right.
to raise your kids.
Right.
It's gotten better only because of gentrification. That has gotten better.
Yeah.
Um, and with the program that I work for with the kids, I work with fourth and fifth graders.
Hmm.
We do a lot of social emotional learning. Um, and a big part of the social emotional learning is for them to be able to recognize their emotions, but then to also be able to solve problems in a way that doesn't always have to resort to like arguments and violence
Yeah.
and things of that nature. Because
Right.
there isn't a day that goes by where it's like, if a fight does happen, that they tell me, well, my mom or my dad told me if someone hits me that I have to hit them back. And I deal with that every day.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't be mad at that because that's the way I was raised also. I was
I
raised
know.
to
I
fight.
I told my kids when they were little, "You all gonna fight? Go outside and fight."
Yeah.
I mean, I should have dealt with it differently, like for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I totally get where that comes from. I mean, it's okay to have those feelings of being mad or upset or hurt, but it's how you express them. That's the part I think that we've have a disconnect. Instead of saying, "Well, he hit me, okay, we'll hit him back." No, is let's use our words and say, "Hey, dude, that wasn't nice."
Yeah.
I don't want you to hit me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
well, I'm so glad that you're able to you didn't shy away from the fact that you have your own personal troubles that you're dealing with, but you still found it in your heart to take a job where you're helping other kids because you see where in your own life that was neglected or that wasn't taken care of, and so now you can be a part of these kids life and be able to help them in some way. Sometimes it just takes a little bit to make an impression on somebody, to
Hmm.
make a change in their life.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
right. So if you could tell your younger self one thing, and what would you have told yourself?
Um. mm, I would probably say that um that it's not gonna get easier, but it will get better.
Oh, that's good advice. Yeah.
I would say that because I feel like for anybody going through something
Uh-huh.
that we I mean obviously we want like a way out of
Right.
whatever we
Mhm.
are dealing with. For me personally to get to the place where I am now, it required me to go through a lot of different like processes, and
Mhm.
I unfortunately had to deal with a lot of different types of trauma.
Mhm.
And so that shaped me into who I am in ways that I don't like. But I'm able to change it and use it for the better.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that nothing is ever easy. And that is
Mm.
something that I have to remind myself, but things do get better eventually.
Well, I just think that is absolutely wonderful, and I love how um you've used a kintsugi mindset to apply that to your life, apply it to um these kids, or apply it to your church family or whatever situation that you're in. And and if we allow God, to take those pieces and put them back together for us, I mean, our message becomes so much better and stronger.
Mm.
And I just hope that, I mean, you've given me inspiration because I'm like over here, like, oh my God, I don't want to be doing this. And you're like, well, how can I use this to make, to help somebody? And I really love that about you. I hope you continue with your podcast because I just love, listening to it. And so how can the people who want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you?
Yes, they can. Well, the podcast, Kintsugi Talks podcast, KINTSUGI, it is available to listen to on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. There's also a YouTube channel for it,
Hmm.
where I'm starting to like get more people to do interviews and stuff, and the visual version of it is something that people have asked for. So there's a YouTube channel for that now.
Yeah.
Um, on Instagram is Kintsugi Talks Pod. If they want to follow my personal Instagram, it is Saroya underscore the underscore vessel. Um,
Hmm.
I also have a like mental health ministry page called A Unique Vessel. Um,
Okay.
that is like A underscore unique underscore vessel. I use a lot of underscores in my usernames. Why I don't know. Um,
Well, I mean, it makes well, Earth, I knew exactly why you do it because it gives you a space and it also makes it unique. So no one, it doesn't, if it's already taken, someone else can't, you can still use it.
mhm.
So, but yeah, no, I totally get that. So, I mean, what else is there anything else like you have on your mind or your heart that you would like to talk about?
um, I would say for people that know me personally and hopefully from like the people who watch this
Mhm.
um that one thing about me is that I have like grown to be an advocate for mental health and mental illness in the Christian space specifically.
Hmm.
Um, because I find that even through my own personal experience and just the experience of a lot of people, there is still a bit of stigma when it comes to mental health and mental illness, because those are two different things, but they
Oh, yeah.
coincide with each other.
Right.
Um, and I just feel that there needs to be more of an awareness
Hmm.
that like the institutional church should do more in like hiring therapists on site, hiring therapists to be a part of staff,
Hmm.
doing sermons, doing groups where we're not just talking about like the basic stuff about like mental health of like, oh, like
Hmm.
taking care of your mind, renewing your mind, like doing things that you like to do for yourself. Like talk about the more serious stuff, like the fact that there is likely one out of five or one out of six people in any congregation that can have a mental diagnosis or could be living with an undiagnosed illness themselves.
Right. Right.
Um, talking about suicidality and suicide itself,
Mhm.
because I forget when this happened, but there was like a very well-known pastor that he unfortunately took his own life, and it became this huge thing, obviously because he was very well known. And
Mhm.
it seems to only be in those situations where that's when the church wants to be part of the conversation. That when it just gets to the point that it's like, oh, like the person has taken their life, and there's a lot of people
Exactly.
there's a lot of people who don't understand that it's like it takes a lot for someone to get to that point. It takes for them to go
Yeah.
through so many different things, and then the one question that was asked that was like, oh, like why telling me he already has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and there's still that stigma, there's still that feeling of just like, oh, like I'm gonna be judged on my faith in God for even saying that I'm dealing with something in regards to my mental health, my well-being. Because
Oh, that is so
I,
true. Yeah.
because I truly believe in Jesus in therapy. I believe in both, and I believe both can coincide with each other, and both have been coinciding with each other for a very long time. There's a reason that
Oh,
we
yeah.
have therapists, there's a reason we have medication, there's a reason we have psychiatrists. God
Mhm.
has given those gifts and those talents to those people to help
Mhm.
aid us. And you
Yes.
can be taking medication, you can have a therapist, and you can still have 100% faith in God. There should be no one who is a part of the church or not part of the church who feels they have the right to judge someone
Mhm.
based on what they choose to do to take care of themselves. Like, because people are very quick to like send like well wishes and prayers to someone who has like a broken ankle, and because it is something that they can see, it's something that they can see is like, oh, like this is a real thing. But to someone who
Yeah.
struggles with schizophrenia,
Mhm.
they don't get well wishes, they don't get flowers, they don't get cards, they get stigma, they get indifference, they get
Yeah.
judgment, they get
Yeah.
they get like laying of hands to try to cast out the demon that is inside of them, which is not fair. It's not fair. Like, how can you show all this love and attention to someone with a physical injury but not someone with an emotional mental injury? Like,
Exactly.
it's the
And it's
same level, it needs to be treated the same.
yeah, and those are not things that you see. And someone, if you tell somebody, well, I have this, they don't see it. So they're the doubting Thomas, you know.
Yeah.
That is so true. I love that you said that. I'm so glad you said that. Um, because my whole thing was when growing up, I went to church, but you didn't go to the doctor. You didn't go anywhere to get, if you were sick, you got prayed for, and that was the end of it. You just dealt with it. And however, my as an adult, I'm like, why did God give this knowledge to these people to help us if we're not going to use it?
Yeah.
I mean, I really believe, God, is allowing this. I mean, he's not going to let us educate ourselves and come up with new medications and things like that if we're not going to be able to use it. So I really love that you said that. That is such an awesome point. So, well, Saroya, I am so glad that you reached out and we were able to meet up. I feel like I've met a new friend, and I hope that we can get together again and just talk more about, um, you know, the mental disorders and kids and, um, just making it through life. And I try not to just make it through life. I try to do life, and
Yeah.
to be good at
Yeah.
it. Well, anyway, if there's anything, if anybody, I will have this on my podcast, but when I upload it, but her information will be in the notes, and I think I already have them in the notes here. I'm not for sure, but if not, I'll add them. And so if anybody wants to reach out, I would definitely give her podcast a listen to. It is wonderful. I love it. I love hearing her voice. And I'm really going to encourage her to keep doing what she's been doing. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm happy
thank
to be here on your show. And I hope we do something together soon in the future. I really
Oh,
hope so.
yeah, for sure. Thank you, Soroya, and you have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.